Hello, everybody. Today is Saturday. It's March 1st, 2025. You are here with Robin at In the Family Way Coaching, and we're here for our daily Bible reading. We are reading through the entire Bible, and we are using the Day by Day Kids Bible, which has been written by Karen Henley. If you are new to this series, please don't be discouraged by the fact that we are reading a kids' Bible. This is just a storybook version, which gives us an overview of the entire Bible from Genesis through Revelation in chronological order. So it reads in one continuous story, whereas in the Bible, the books are not presented in chronological order. And also, some events are recorded in more than one book. So they can be a little confusing when you are reading as to what exactly which event you're reading. You might think, did I already read about this? Did this happen already? And this is an easy to understand version where all of these events have been consolidated into one timeline. So we will read the story from start to finish. So, for instance, when we get to the New Testament and we have the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, um, Matthew, no, John, yes, that's right. I was unsure of my words there for a moment. When we get to the Gospels, then some of the events were recorded in all of the Gospels. And instead of reading about them separately, we will read all of them in one timeline and only hear about each event once rather than having it repeated for ease of understanding. So, thank you so much for joining me here today. I am glad to have you, whether you are watching or listening. If you are on TikTok or on my site, whether you have found me on YouTube or whatever your favorite podcasting app is, Apple Music, YouTube Music, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, Podfriend, Overcast, Cast Off, Zencaster. Ooh, there's a lot of them. But Pandora, we are also on Pandora. However, you are listening or watching today, thank you so much for being here. I have had a lot of views lately, or and listens, particularly on Apple Music. So if you are joining me on Apple Music, thank you so much for being here. And if you have not already, please consider subscribing to the channel in whichever way you are watching or listening. I also have a monthly participation gift that I am sending out to those who are participating and listening regularly. And you can participate or listen regularly by showing me your participation by clicking that light button, as well as leaving a comment on the places where a comment is permitted. On my YouTube channel, I have it marked as made for kids, so the comment section is not available. So, but I think you might be able to leave a comment if you are listening via the YouTube channel, the YouTube music channel. Where it's just the audio version of the podcast. You can also leave comments on my Spotify or the TikTok, and I have comments enabled on Apple Music and other places as well. And also, if you would like to head over to my site at www.inthefamilywaycoaching.com and click under the tab of Read the Bible in 1 year, I have all of the recordings listed there, as well as right up at the top, a place for you to leave me a message so that you can send me a message letting me know that you've watched it or if you have a question about anything. I would love to hear from you. And also, at some point, if you are interested in participating in receiving that participation gift, I would need to have your address so I can actually mail it to you. So thank you for being here. This is the 1st of March, so I have the new calendar uploaded to the site. That is available for free for anybody who would like to download it and keep track of their daily achievement as well as their commitment to read the Bible with us every day. Don't be discouraged if you are just coming in the month of March, because this is the Bible, you're familiar. It doesn't have to be read from the very beginning. You can pick it up at any point in time. It's a little bit like a soap opera. but without all of the inappropriate details. So we have, I just want you to be encouraged that we have that calendar that you can use to keep track. If you would feel led to support the event, I will mail you a copy of the calendar, which is printed out on sugarcane paper, and it will look like this little tan there because it's not bleached, as well as a set of stickers for the month so that you can mark that off each day and keep track of your daily commitment. You are not obligated in any way to support the event. This is just simply a free gift that I have available for you if you are wanting to support the event, because you have the downloadable calendar available for you to print anytime you like there on my site. So that was a lot of intro there for us. But if you do have your calendar and you are ready to get that out, let's get that sticker out because you're about to read the Bible today. We have been reading through the book of 1 Samuel, and we have been reading about David. We saw the other day that God is not going to be allowing Saul's family to stay king of his people because he disobeyed God by offering his own offering uh, on the, before the battle was to take place and not waiting for Samuel. And so we see that God has chosen another man to be king, and he has chosen David, who is the son of Jesse, the youngest son, I should say as well. And I want to point out God's timing. Now, Samuel was instructed by God to anoint, which means to put oil on his head. It's somewhere, I don't know exactly where, but we know that he had to put oil on his head to show that he was chosen by God to be the next king of Israel. Now, notice that this did not take place right away. David had to wait a long time for his turn to be king. Even though he was told he was to be king, it didn't happen immediately. All of these different events had to occur before he would actually get to be king. So we're going to see how we did see how he got introduced into Saul's court, his kingdom area. And we see that it is because God's spirit has been taken away from Saul, and instead he is sometimes sent a bad spirit that bothers him. And his servants suggested to him that he find somebody who could play the harp, and they suggested David, and that when Saul would hear the harp, that he would be relieved, he would feel better, and the evil spirit would leave him. And we see that that is exactly the case of what happened. So we are going to be reading about David today in his very famous battle with a giant. And what's that giant's name? That's right, Goliath. So we're going to be seeing David battle Goliath today. And we're going to get to see faith again in action. Today's reading comes to us from 1 Samuel chapter 17. And if you are hungry for more of the details of this event, then I always will like to encourage you to head up your big Bible and check out the chapter that we are reading. And today it happens to be 1 Samuel chapter 17. And it's appropriately entitled, The Giant. Now the enemy army came out to fight. The men made their camp on a hill. So Saul got his men together. They made their camp across the valley. A winning fighter was in the enemy camp. His name was Goliath. He was more than 9 feet tall. He wore a hard metal helmet on his head. He wore a very heavy metal armor. He wore a metal guard on the front of each leg. And he carried a long, thin, pointed spear on his back. Another spear had a sharp point that weighed 15 pounds. A man went in front of Goliath carrying a big shield. One day, Goliath stood up. He shouted at God's people, "Choose a man to come out and fight me. If he kills me, we'll be your servants. But if I kill him, you'll be our servants." Goliath came out every morning and evening for 40 days. Saul and all of God's people were afraid. Now Jesse was very old, and his 3 oldest sons were in Saul's army. His son David was Saul's helper, and he'd be with Saul for a while, and then he'd go home for a while to care for his father's sheep. And one day Jesse called David. "Here's some grain and 10 loaves of bread," he said. "They're for your brothers, so hurry to the army camp. Take these 10 blocks of cheese to the captain, find out how everyone is doing, then come back and tell me." So David set out early in the morning, and he left his sheep with another shepherd. Then he went to the army camp. Now the men were taking their places to fight, and they were shouting their war cry. So David went to the man who kept the food, and he left the bread and grain and cheese there. Then he ran to where his brothers were, and he said hello. Just then, Goliath came out. He shouted at God's people just as he always did. David heard him. Then God's people ran from Goliath. They were very scared. "Look how he keeps coming out," they said. "The king will pay lots of money to anyone who kills him. The king will also let that man marry his daughter, and his family won't have to pay any taxes." So David talked to some men close by, and he asked, "Is that really what the king will do?" The men told David again that the king would do this. Now David's oldest brother heard him talking to the men, and he got mad at David. "Why are you here? Who did you leave the sheep with? I know how proud you are. I know your heart is full of sin. You just came over here to watch the battle." "What did I do now?" asked David. "Can't I even talk?" Then David turned to some others, and he asked that same previous question, and they gave the same answer. Somebody told King Saul what David was asking about, so Saul sent for David. "Nobody should be scared of Goliath," said David. "I'll go fight him." "You can't go fight Goliath," said Saul. "You're just a boy, and Goliath has been a fighter for years." "I've been taking care of my father's sheep," said David, "and when a lion or a bear took a sheep, I chased it. I hit it, and I took the sheep back. When it came after me, I killed it." David went on. "I've killed lions and bears. This man Goliath will be just like them. He has come against God's army. God is alive and well. He saved me from the lion and from the bear, and he will save me from Goliath." "Go on then," said Saul. "I pray that God will be with you." Then Saul gave David his own heavy metal armor, and he put his own metal helmet on David's head. He gave David his sword. Then David tried to walk around, but he wasn't used to the heavy armor. "I can't wear these," said David. "I'm not used to them." So he took them off. David picked up the stick that he used for walking, and he went to a brook. He picked up 5 smooth stones from the water. He put them into his shepherd's bag. Then David took his sling into his hand. He would use it to throw the stones, and he walked toward Goliath. Goliath came closer and closer to David. Goliath's helper carried his big shield in front of him. Goliath took a good look at David. He could see that David was only a boy, and he could tell that David was good looking. Goliath hated David. "Do you think I'm a dog?" he said. "Do you come against me with sticks?" Then he asked his fake gods to do bad things to David. "Come over here," he said to David, "and I'll let the birds and animals eat you up." "You come against me with a sword," said David. "But I come against you in the name of the Lord. Today God will give you to me. I'll hit you, you'll fall down dead, then I'll cut off your head. Today the birds and animals will eat your army," said David. "Then everybody in the world will know that there is God. He doesn't save by swords and spears. The fight is God's. He will help us win." Goliath came closer, and David ran out to meet him. David got a stone from his bag. He swung his sling around, and the stone flew out. It went right onto the front of Goliath's forehead. Goliath fell down with his face to the ground. David ran out to Goliath, and he pulled out Goliath's sword. He killed Goliath and cut off his head. David took Goliath's sword and his spear, and he put them in his own tent. The enemies turned and ran away, and God's people shouted and ran after them. God's people won the battle. And that's the end of our reading today. Isn't that a great story? So exciting. I think the funniest thing I thought was that Goliath could tell that David was good looking. It was so hard not to laugh. When Samuel was trying to see who of Jesse's sons was chosen by God, God told him right away, "Don't look and judge by how people look. I don't see how men see. I see the heart." And it's funny because it definitely gives us the world view that people often make the comments that David was very good looking. So I guess all of Jesse's sons were good looking because he was trying to judge even from the very first son yesterday. So how do you love David's faith? Do you love that he said, "You come against us with swords and spears," but God doesn't? God is with us, and we will win the battle because the battle is God's. So that, of course, is our daily application today, that whatever it is that we need to go up against, whatever it is, the battle belongs to the Lord. I pray that you will have David's faith every single time you come up across anything that is even a little bit difficult. And I pray that you will have the faith of David to remember that God is the one who is in charge of the battle. And that's why God chose him to be his king, is because he has a heart for God. And I pray that all of us have a heart for God. David's faith in God was very strong, and he very rightly saw that God was the one who had saved him every time he fought against a lion or a bear. He killed them and took that sheep back. And in the same way that God had protected him then, he was sure and had faith that God would protect him against that battle with Goliath. In that same way, God uses past experiences or current experiences to build our faith in him, so that when we come across challenges in our life, no matter what they are, that we remember those things and remember God's faithfulness and God's power and God's ability. And he stretches our faith even more, so that when we rely on him for those small things and we see how faithful he is, that we will be encouraged to have faith for him in bigger things. And that's how he grows our faith. So we will have even more difficult challenges that we have to come across. And as we've talked about many times over this year already, is that God uses every single thing for good. And these situations that we have to come into every day are used by God to strengthen our faith in Him. And that's what we see happen with David. He was remembering the situations that he had been in, and he knew God had always been with him before, and he would be with him now. So I pray that that is what each one of you experiences, that you remember anytime you are frustrated or in the middle of any kind of a situation, that you remember God's faithfulness in your prior experiences, and that you um, bring that into your prayer and say, God, just as you were with me when I went through, I know you will be with me now. And God loves that faith. That is what makes him happy. Well, that's all I have for us today. Thank you so much for joining me today. Whether you are watching or listening, I'm really glad that you're here with us. I, if you, I'm just super excited today because I've been looking at the analytics and I see more listeners and more people listening, and it's just really lit my light and lit the fire in my heart for this event. So if you feel also that God has lit your light today with today's reading, please click that light button. If you are new here, the light button looks like a thumbs up or a heart, but it's really a light. And we are using that light button to light up the world for Jesus and spread the word about reading God's word. Thank you very much, and I will see everybody again tomorrow.